Thank you. That's a lovely, warm response. Thank you.
Thanks, David, for this film. I thought I would start by asking you to just tell us about how you came upon this idea of the burial shroud. I mean, the idea of memorializing the dead is an old one. Of course, you know, as humans, we've been thinking about this for centuries, and this is a relationship with mummification and various funerary rites. So how did this idea arrive?
Well, you can listen to Karsh, you know. It really starts with the box, you know. It's the inability to separate himself from his wife of so many years and feeling that he wanted to get in the box with her. And obviously he couldn't, it's not really practical. But having that feeling, and since he's a tech entrepreneur, he came up with a tech entrepreneurial version of getting into the box with his dead wife, not wanting to let her go, and even in decomposition, still wanting to not let her go. That's really it. There are so many. I mean, I did get into some research. It's not that I've been obsessed with burial or anything, I must say, but the variety of ways of dealing with the dead is astonishing when you get to it. I mean, the Jains, they build a kind of tower and they put the dead bodies on top of the tower, completely naked and open to the world, and then they wait for the vultures to come and take these bodies apart. And that is, to them, that is a decent, honorable way of dealing with the dead, which it to the West would seem quite extreme and kind of grotesque. So there's just, it's an innate human conundrum, really. How do you deal with the dead? And so that's really where it came from.
You know, I think you've never not made a personal film. I think they're all personal in some ways, but maybe in this case, even more so, as I understand that you were dealing with grief as well when you started writing this film.
Yeah. Yes, my wife Carolyn, of who we had been together for 43 years and raised 3 children and so on. Sorry? What did he say?
No, I think it was just a walk. No, nothing.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe there was a really interesting comment there. One which I could incorporate into my next movie without paying any residuals or anything. Yeah, the thing is that, yes, of course, it was, the whole project came from my own response to the death of my wife of 43 years. But then, as soon as you start to write a story that is based on those emotions, many of which were, you know, you anticipate, but then when it happens to you, it's you can't believe the responses that you're having. You can't, and so once you start to write, you are creating a fiction, and you are inventing characters, and you are inventing dynamics and so on. It's still powered by your own response to your situation, but everything that you write has to come from your life, basically. Your understanding of how humans interact, your understanding of the way the world works. It's unique to you, and that's what you've got to work with when you're writing a screenplay, an original screenplay, and when you're making the movie. And then at that point, it isn't, I've said many times, for me, art is absolutely not therapy. It is not therapeutic. It is not cathartic. It's something else, but it's not that. And in the sense of, you know, I'll just mention an anecdote. At one point, I was visited in Toronto by an Italian psychiatrist. He didn't just walk in off the street. He arranged to come and meet me because he was someone who also liked to write about cinema, and from a psychiatric point of view. And at one point he said, "So, incidentally, I mean, how are you dealing with this loss of yours?" And I said, well, I'm suffering, that's how I'm dealing with it. And he said, oh, I don't think you need therapy. So the answer is that you can make as many movies and write as many novels as you want, but you will still suffer, and it doesn't go away.
So you say art is not therapy, but it's something else. And I'm wondering, could you say what that something else is?
Well, to me, movies, it's children playing in a sandbox, You're putting on funny hats, and you're putting on a mustache, and you're pretending to be other people, and you can get so serious about it because of the money, because of the time pressure, because of all the, exposure to media and so on. But basically, it's play. It's children playing. We're playing. It's fun. And that even, I had heard that being on Ingmar Bergman's set was actually hilarious and lots of laughs. I'm serious. That's the reports I've heard. And it makes perfect sense to me because the seriousness goes into the filmmaking. Of course, I hope you, I wasn't here while the movie was playing, but I hope you laughed a little bit. When we showed the movie at Cannes, they didn't get probably because of the language and cultural things and the fact that maybe they were feeling that if they laughed it was being disrespectful or something. It's the pressure of the Cannes Film Festival. But we didn't get the kind of laughs that I knew we would get, let's say in Toronto, or I assumed we would get here. Life without humor is, I don't know how you would bear it. And so it's the same for me. The movie is a reflection of life, and you better have some laughs. I just want to say one more thing. Yes, so you're writing this screenplay, and then it becomes a fiction. And then it's the craft of screenwriting that preoccupies you, not your grief or your sadness or whatever else. And then you're making the movie, and it's the same thing. You as a craftsperson takes over. The craft is what you're dealing with. You're being a movie maker. And that's the distance that you have, and I think you have to have distance. You can't be wallowing in your grief or whatever it is that you're obsessed with, even if it's a political thing, and you can't be completely swallowed up by your, let's say, your rage at something that you feel is unjust. There has to be some distance for you to really create anything that is alive.
Well, the audience was definitely laughing. I can attest to that. They were laughing. I can attest to that. I was watching the end of the film with them. But actually, that brings me to my next question, which is just the tonal complexity of this film, which I think is also very present in a lot of your films. I find this film very funny, but also very moving. And I'm wondering if that's, tone is such a difficult thing to talk about, but is it something that for you it just arrives, that it's fully formed, you know what you want, or is it something that you fine tune with actors, with music, with camera? It's just, how do you arrive at that kind of complexity with tone?
Well, it begins with the writing, and I think once the characters come alive, sometimes they get funny, and they're amusing, and I let them be amusing. It seems to be pretty natural. I don't really strain at it. It just seems to, when it's flowing, it seems to flow that way.
We were just, we touched on technology, and I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about how much you thought about the actual technology of the burial shroud, because you're a filmmaker who I think has engaged with technology in such interesting ways, especially technology as it relates to the body, but you've worked with technology in your films, you've depicted technology in your films, I think of Videodrome and Existenz and many others, but how much did you think, because the technology in the shroud seems very much within reach and very
it's totally
very
doable.
possible.
It's totally doable. And if any of you are interested in a franchise, I'm actually, strangely enough, I aspire to be like Karsh, my creation, and be an effective entrepreneur, and own a restaurant and a cemetery. I aspire to that, and you can help me. But Yeah, I mean...
Do you have some patent
Well,
on...
for me, technology is absolutely an extension of what it is to be human. I mean, to me, you know, in the 1940s and 50s, technology was, you know, from outer space, and it was alien, and it was non-human, and it seemed obvious to me that technology is totally human, and it reflects back to us exactly what we are, the good and the bad part. And so it's just, I don't even have to think twice about dealing with the technology in my movies. It's just there automatically. I don't think of it as genre stuff. I'm making sci-fi or I'm not making sci-fi. It all seems very innate and obvious.
I wanted to ask about the actors. Maybe we can start with Vincent Cassel, who you've worked with before. Did you have him in, at what point did he come to mind for you? Did you think of him when you were writing? A lot of people have also noted the physical resemblance, perhaps? The physical resemblance to...
Yeah, I did not cast him because of his hair. I know it's hard to believe, but you know, casting is a black art, and there are many aspects to casting that you wouldn't think about or know about, perhaps, like what passport does that actor have? For example, when it's a Canada-France co-production, there are restrictions. I can't use Americans, for example, or I need, if I have one American actor, I have to balance it out by getting some French cameraman, let's say. It all has to do with the co-production agreements between countries. And that's why, for example, Brexit was really a difficult blow for English-speaking directors, because in a co-production with Europe, I could use British actors, for example. I could use my British cameraman, Peter Sushitsky, who I worked with for many, many years on many movies. Once Brexit happened, I could not use Peter. He's no longer part of the EU. So these are strange restrictions in your casting. You can't just get anybody you like who you think might be good. And of course, there's all the other things like, is their agent mad at you, and they'll make sure that it doesn't happen. I've had that happen. You know, maybe they don't want to work with you, maybe they don't like your movies, maybe they're not available, and so on and so on. So you do consider many possibilities for casting. And Vincent was not the only one I thought of, but he certainly was one. And yes, I did think that there were certain tones that he hasn't really addressed in his career. Because in France, he's the tough guy, you know, he's a tough guy, and he talks fast, and that's his native diction. And I said to him that I wanted him to speak more like me, not accent-wise, but more relaxed, you know, kind of chill. And he was really happy to do that, because for some reason he felt he was playing me in the movie. I don't really understand why. Maybe it was the hair, I don't know. He was looking in the mirror too long. And the same with Diane Kruger, whose accent is fantastically good. She is German, she speaks fluent French. And I said, you know, of course there are many kinds of English accents. And this is a Toronto movie, and I'm from sort of Midtown Toronto, and my accent is, if you need a template for your accent, you should model yourself on me, for some reason. Mainly because I was cheap and available. So they didn't need a coach, they just had to listen to me talk, and she did that very well, and so did Guy, the same thing. But Diane was quite shocked when she was wondering when we were scheduling what was called a table read, which is where the actors sit around a table and read the script together and so on. And I don't do that. And then she wondered when we were going to rehearse, and I don't do that either. So she was a little surprised at that.
You've never done that, or you?
I did it I tried to do it with the fly, and we did. You know, and it got to, and it's something that's done all the time in theater, and it's understandable and so on. But I did try it, and I found that it was not only useless, it was counterproductive. It's strange. You get into strange little competitions with the actors getting together, so I really just like the actors to, I say action and they do it. It's simple. That's directing. You can all do it. Trust me. So, yeah, because really, I don't want to tell them what they've taken from reading this script. I want them to show me what their instinct is for that. And if I think they've gone wrong, then we'll have a discussion and we'll adjust. But I just really want them to get out there and say the lines, basically. So the first time that I hear the lines spoken is actually when we do what we call blocking. It's you get on the set in the morning and you say, okay, here we are. This is the physicality of this is where the space that we're in. And see that also, to me, with The Fly, the instant that we're on the set, the real set, in the real costumes, everything changed for the actors. Everything changed. And everything that we had rehearsed was thrown away. And so I really, the only time that I've done a little, if I may be a little bit, you'll forgive me, vulgar, I know this is a very, kind of restrained, inhibited city. Holly Hunter said to me on Crash, she said, David, I think we really need to rehearse. I need to rehearse with these guys. And I said, Holly, I don't rehearse. I don't think, especially for Crash, I just don't think that there's any reason to do this. And she said, look, David, when we're on the set, we're all going to be fucking each other. And we don't know each other. And I think it would be good if we got to know each other first. And I said, oh, okay, let's rehearse. So that was the only time that I did something approximately rehearsal.
But there are also sexual scenes in the Shrouds that they're not coming up.
Strangely enough, we did not rehearse those.
I wanted to ask you to talk about one other thing, which I think is kind of important to the mood of the film, which is this mood of paranoia, and this sort of conspiratorial mood that it's sort of a big part of like film noir in certain genres, but especially in a film about grief, I think it's interesting that you bring in such strong elements of paranoia and conspiracy.
Yeah, that goes with the grief. I mean, it's so the death of a loved one is completely A, impossible, and B, meaningless. These are two things that's very difficult to accept. So in order to endure that, you often find that people try to assign some meaning to what has happened. Of course, it could be religious, God wanted you, your husband or whatever. But there's the other more interesting thing to me is the part that feels that something happened that should not have happened. It should not have been allowed to happen because it's impossible. And that means that maybe there was something going on. Was it the doctors? Was it the hospital? Was it a love affair that you didn't know about? And the other thing is that when someone dies close to you, you have a tendency to feel some kind of guilt somehow, and also the feeling that there were things that did not get said that should have been said. And all of this is ripe for the development of some kind of theory of conspiracy. And I think every conspiracy theory partly comes from a desire to empower yourself. You know what's really going on that other people do not know. That makes you very special. And the other thing is that it gives you some defense against what might happen because of that. And also, it assigns a meaning. We have really evolved to look for meaning everywhere. And when there is no meaning, we're going to invent it somehow. So I think all of that is what I was looking for with the idea that there were conspiracy. And I do know of several people that I've known who have lost someone, and they really developed some very elaborate conspiracies often dealing with doctors and medicines that were developed incorrectly or deliberately wrongly. And you got all of that during COVID, you know.
Getting a sign that we have to wrap up. I'm just going to ask one last question. When the film premiered in Cannes, I was struck when the film premiered in Cannes, I was struck by how many people were talking about it as a kind of a thought experiment or a litmus test. Like, would you do this? Would you want to, use this technology to actually, with a loved one? And I'm wondering if that was something that you thought about or talked about with the people you were working with.
Well, I'm hoping that my franchisees here will help me with that, because they'll let me know if they're having good sales or not. I mean, it's something that could be done in your backyard.
But I also heard some people say that they would do it, but not with a loved one.
Well, yes, you could enjoy seeing your enemy disintegrate.
David, thank you for this extraordinary film.
Thank you. Thanks very much.